morning and welcome to the fourth quarter gathering of the UACDC Partners Coalition. My name is Sarah Combs and I'm the CEO of University Area CDC, and we are just so happy that you've chosen to spend your morning with us. Now, this is a little different from how we would typically gather, and it just feels like forever since we've seen your smiling faces. We are more than ready to get back to business as usual, but until then, we continue to evolve and adapt and move forward. And today's video is simply another way in which we are doing just that. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, the University Area CDC Partners Coalition consists of businesses, organizations, and individuals who have a real vested interest in the university area community, and most importantly, a mission to improve it. The purpose of our coalition is to educate members on the latest programs and initiatives that are taking place here in the community. And it's also to generate collaborative opportunities for funding and partnerships, to share timely information and undertake common initiatives whenever possible, to serve as a family of resources for Uptown University area residents, and most importantly, to come together to identify ways to solve real community challenges. So we hope that is the reason that you're watching today, as we are committed and dedicated to providing you with a great lineup of speakers and timely topics to discuss as well. So on that note, we would typically have resource tables at a regular in-person gathering featuring various partners and programs and services that you may benefit from. And while we're unable to offer that element virtually, please know that we will bring those back just as soon as we are able to meet in person. So it's important that we continue to network and share resources, and when we get back in person, we'll be sure to do that after our gathering. Before I go, I want to give a very special thank you to our wonderful board of directors who just continue to support this effort and the important collaborative work that we do. And I'd like to give a very special thank you to our board chairman, Mr. Tony Coleman, and his company ACES for being a proud sponsor of the Partners Coalition. I also want to encourage you to be active on social media platforms in order to share the important and wonderful things that are happening in this community. And don't forget to use hashtag Partners Coalition and hashtag UACDC when doing so. Our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter handles are all at Univ Area CDC. So please make sure to follow us on those platforms as well. And make sure that you visit uacdc.org for the most up-to-date offerings and information. Now, it is my extreme pleasure to introduce Dr. Shemaine Moss-Torres. Shemaine is currently our STEPS Program Director at UACDC, and she will serve as the host for today's gathering. So Shemaine, take it away.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and it is my honor to be here with you today. Just like our in-person gatherings, this virtual gathering consists of three main components, which are community investment, focusing forward, and small biz equals big impact. Our first presentation, centered on community investment, focuses on the property development occurring at 139th Avenue and 19th Street, just north of our Harvest Hope Park. For this presentation, we have none other than our own Sarah Combs, along with Miles Ballogg, who is the Director of Brownfields and Economic Development for CARDNO. So without further ado, our community investment presentation.
As Shemaine said, I am here with my good friend and partner, Miles Ballogg, who is the Director of Brownfields and Economic Development for CARDNO. University Area CDC was so lucky to receive an assessment grant from the EPA, which has allowed us to partner with CARDNO and do the due diligence on sites like this, especially after we have acquired it through our land banking program, Harvest Hope Properties. Miles, why don't you go ahead and share with the audience what we're trying to accomplish here on this site?
Well, good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here and to work with Sarah on this important community project. My role in this development is to ensure that any environmental issues like potential contamination are addressed in an appropriate manner and that the land is safe for redevelopment. My other role is to determine how to utilize the site. And as you can see, this site has some serious challenges. With the site has 10-foot drainage ditches that surround the property with a wetland that runs through it. The beauty of my job is to look at blighted properties like this and determine the way that they can be redeveloped in a beneficial and meaningful way for the community, and that's exactly what we're doing with this site. After meeting with Sarah and her team and learning about the needs of the community, we created 4 reuse options for the community to engage with.
And that is exactly what we did. We engaged with the community, the residents who live in the Uptown University area community. While our outreach looked a little different this year due to social distancing, we were really able to overcome this by working with our partners in the community to meet residents, especially where they are, in order to get their feedback. We set up our display boards to solicit feedback from area residents at Moore Elementary. We also went to Santa Maria Mission and at the Back to School event at Bowers Whitley. We also were really lucky in getting a community resident who also is a UACDC board member to set up a feedback station across from Harvest Hope Park. So he was able to get input from residents who were walking and biking in the area.
While all the reuse options were different, the one common theme that was seen throughout was the importance of creating permeable pathways within the wetland setback, as well as a boardwalk through the wetland area to make this space accessible to the community and to create a park-like feel. All 4 concepts reflect stormwater, streetscape, and connectivity improvements that align with the Harvest Hope infrastructure plan. Residents have the following 4 options to choose from: 10 single-family cottages for home ownership, 13 townhomes for home ownership, 6 townhomes in a neighborhood market, and 16 multifamily units with a bodega.
We collected nearly 300 responses, in which the winning response was, drumroll please, single-family cottages. And what we learned from area residents through our engagement was that they desperately wanted an opportunity at the American dream of being a homeowner and homeownership. So our next step in this development will be working with all of you who are our partners to create a holistic plan around this development to really bring it to life.
Thank you all so much for learning more about the community investments happening in the Uptown University area. Please be sure to join the UACDC on January 28th at the next Partners Coalition gathering, where they will share with you the plans for a brand new cultural campus a few blocks from where we are standing right now. It is my pleasure to be a partner in this meaningful work of the community development, and I truly believe that together we are all so much stronger.
Wow. Thank you, Sarah and Miles. It's always so exciting to see these types of development plans come into fruition. And we will be sure to update you on the progress as this initiative moves along. If you would like more information on this project or the Brownfields work that it entails, please reach out to Sarah at scombs@uacdc.org. Now let's roll along to the focusing forward portion of our gathering. This section features a panel discussion of law enforcement and the community. And that topic actually was determined from a community conversation that was held in partnership with Safe and Sound Hillsborough. The purpose of the event was to establish topics specific to the Uptown University area in which Partners Coalition members would benefit from hearing further dialogue during our quarterly gatherings. The Focusing Forward series is intended to be thought-provoking and features key stakeholders discussing real concerns, opportunities, and initiatives happening in our community. For today's conversation, Mr. Freddy Barton, Executive Director of Safe and Sound Hillsborough, will be our moderator, and panelists include Mr. Ross Fabian, Community Resident and UACDC Board Member, Mr. Christopher Harris, Executive Pastor at Crossover Church, Mr. Richard Roebuck, Commander for District 1 of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office and UACDC Board Member. So ladies and gentlemen, our Focusing Forward panel conversation.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today to have a real frank conversation. We want this to be an open discussion, and we're just going to jump right into it. Before we get started, I just want to get to know more about you all, so if you could introduce yourselves. And then the first kickoff question is, what do you think is the most pressing issue in the university area with regards to law enforcement and community relations. We're going to start first with you, Pastor Harris.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Freddie, for the work that you do and your commitment to our city. I also want to take a moment and thank Sarah and her team and the whole UACDC and what they do. They're just committed and consistent to being a part of the solution, and so I want to give kudos and salute to them. So I'm Christopher Harris. I'm the executive pastor at Crossover Church in Tampa, here, of course, and our lead pastor is Tommy Colonen. We would consider ourselves to be one of the anchors in that area, just because we're committed also to long-term helping to affect change, positive change in that area. I'm a husband and a dad, and just totally invested in our city. More specifically to your question around possible solutions around our community and around law enforcement, our nation has become so polarized, very polarized. And, it's really easy to pick one side or the other. Well, you're either for, Black Lives Matter or you're for Blue Lives Matter, right? And I think that's a challenge, right? So I think that there has to be an agreement that we should not have to pick either one. We should pick both. And so I think, at this point, many people are tired of just conversations. They're tired of just forums and dialogues and emails and panels. I think people are looking for action. And it's going to require law enforcement community to acknowledge that there are some bad apples that affect the good apples. I think that as a community, we have to look at those in our community who are creating some challenges, but also acknowledging that there are also real people who are doing good stuff that should not be lumped into just automatically being pigeonholed or put in a box. And I think if we can have that authenticity that's moving towards action and not passivity, I think we'll be good to go.
Awesome, thank you. Ross, is it Coach Ross? Is it President Ross? Is it just Ross?
It's quite a few titles.
You can introduce yourself with all the titles.
Well, I just use the basic one. I'm Ross Fabian, President of Mayor Florida. You know what I mean? I have a bunch of titles. I've been living in the university area for about 30 years. But with law enforcement in the university community is something totally different. And the reason why it's different is because of what goes on the outside and what goes on the inside of that block. Thanks to UACDC, who came up, who actually gave people understanding that they're not just law enforcement, but people here to help them. They can see another side. Because if you see law enforcement, you see law and order. I ain't gonna say protect and serve, I'm saying we here to arrest you. And that's the way the community look at them. And when we get to reform, there's other ways to handle this. But at the end of the day, if it wasn't for UACDC bringing the people to the community so they can actually see the community itself and the groundwork and the things that they're doing, you still have to understand that there's a big power struggle between law enforcement and the individuals in the community. You know what I mean? And that's the issue that they need to understand, that there's two sides of this. Community building starts with, no offense, but from what they see, with law enforcement.
So you think it's an image, a real
It's
big image?
a huge image.
Yeah.
And because you have to understand, they have a job to do. And no offense in my community, it's good people, but you got bad people too. And in our community, we have to do this to survive. This is what we have to do. Law enforcement, this is what they got to do to get paid, to arrest. And that's the way we see each other. You know what I mean? I don't, because I live on both sides. But then when we get to reform, and as criminal reform, community reform, educational reform, it's a whole lot of stuff that come in there, Fred, that we actually got to get into.
And we're gonna hit on that reform in a little bit. But Major, introduce yourself to us and let us hear from you, from your perspective.
Yeah, so I'm Rick Roebuck. I'm currently the major, the district commander of District 1, which is in University area. I've been with the Sheriff's Office. I started in District 1 as a patrol deputy in March of 1997. So I was patrolling those streets in that time. I came back a few times as a supervisor, and grateful and fortunate I'll be able to come back, now as a commander of that district. So it's pretty cool to come full circle, starting there as a patrol deputy and then get to come back and kind of have a say in how things are run. I'm born and raised in Hillsborough County in Tampa. I actually grew up just south of the university area, like Adventure Island, Busch Gardens area, if y'all are familiar with that area. That's where I grew up, graduated from Hillsborough High School. So So I have some stake in this community too. I've been here my whole life. So going on to our community problem, I think it's kind of in line with what Ross is talking about. I would say it's cooperation. So because of that image, what he spoke of, we don't get cooperation. We're there to investigate crimes, serious crimes, homicides and shootings. We just had a shooting on 19th Street right next to his park. And nobody ever sees anything, hears anything, or wants to tell us anything. And even the victims, even the victims that are shot, we don't need your help. We got it. We'll handle it. So we don't have cooperation when we're trying to investigate crimes. But then it's not just on the community to be able to. We have to build that trust, and I get that. It's a multifaceted approach, and we can't just expect them to cooperate. But we have to build them relationships. And we build that trust, like Sheriff Chronister always says, we build trust one relationship at a time. And that's what we have to do. So we have to build the relationships in the community and build that trust, and then we'll get that cooperation. Because everybody deserves to live in a safe community. Everybody deserves that, no matter where the community is. And that's our job, is to provide that safe community. But we can't arrest our way out of it. We can't. We have to have that partnership, and we have to do it together. We can't do it alone.
So, Pastor, I'm going to let you close out this first portion. So, if you could pick one word as far as the biggest issue. So, we hear cooperation, we hear image. What's one word? Biggest issue?
We need to press reset.
Reset. Okay. All right. So, Ross, you're a long-term resident in the university area. You've got your ear to the ground. You've got your hand on the pulse. You talk to youth all the time. You talk to residents all the time. So from your perspective, what do you think, how do you feel law enforcement is doing? What kind of job are they doing at making sure that they are maintaining or repairing relationships in the community?
That's a trick question, Fred.
I know.
The reason why it's a trick question is because you have to understand what law enforcement duty is. You know what I mean? And if you understand what their duty is as a resident, is that, okay, I can use them, I need them, sometimes I can't stand them. You know what I mean? I'm just being straight up, because you got to understand how we in the community live our life on everyday lives. But in the overall picture, you know what I mean, law enforcement do what they're supposed to do. You know what I mean? They're there to, if you call them, they're going to come. If you got a problem, they're doing any other stuff that they got the minutes doing, they're going to do that. If they're riding by and see you doing stuff that you ain't got to do, that's their job to do. But as me as an individual see is law enforcement, I see it different from what other people in the community see. Because not only that, what I do is youth programs, get kids together, talk to parents. Some parents have some situations that they can't even help out kids. I go out my way to do what I have to do. If I call law enforcement, they ride by, hey, Coach Ross, how you doing? Everything all right? You're smoking your cigar today. Yeah, but I need your help. I got a community situation going on here. Just drive by and just give a presence. You know what I mean? And they'll do that for you.
And they respond to you?
Oh, yes, of course they're going to respond to me.
But he's in a different position in terms of credibility, in terms of respect, in terms of longevity, and in terms of relationship than a person who just moved to the area 6 months ago. And I think that answer would be different.
And that's my point. The reason why it would be different, because it goes back into the reform situation, because actuality, dealing with that situation, the law enforcement needs to be more than law and order, protect and serve. How about community building and unity and togetherness? He can come over in the neighborhood, he can get to know the people in the neighborhood, everybody that moves in the neighborhood, everybody that's new in the neighborhood. And I understand about the funding, defund the police. I disagree with that. I think they need more money to do what they need to do to help us be who we are in the community.
So you're giving tips on what law enforcement should do. So I want to bring up the word training, right? So Major, we keep hearing the word training. That's the solution for everything. The officers need more training, more training, more training. But I want to know what training is mandatory already. So before a deputy even hits the street, what is the amount of training? What's the main training that's mandatory? And then after that, what ongoing trainings are required of a deputy or anyone that's working with the sheriff's department? And then the trick question is what training do you feel is not being implemented or that could be implemented to help deputies in the university area do their jobs effectively but still repair relationships?
Okay, so to start out, the mandatory training for every deputy that comes through the sheriff's office, they start out with a 2-week training of a academy orientation. So that just kind of gets them oriented into the law enforcement profession, into our agency. We kind of talk about culture, history. We do talk about community service, stress resilient training, and getting them ready for the academy. All right, so they're going to be together for a long time. So then they go to the basic law enforcement academy over at HCC. That's about 5.5 months, so 770 hours. So that's where they go through all their basic investigations, firearms, interviews, their entire basic law enforcement curriculum. After that, they come back to us for a post-academy training, which is about 8 weeks right now currently, and that's where we dig a little bit more into what they learned, the basic stuff, and we show them how we do it at the sheriff's office. So we get a little more into our computer programs, our report writing, a little advanced firearms, building clearing. Then we do community service in that as well, resilience, de-escalation training. All this stuff is what we go through. From there, once they graduate from module, they then go out. Now they're hit the street with the field training deputy, and that is going to be like another almost 4 months. From there, then they're still on probation where they're evaluated monthly until they finish that year from their data rank. So they're about 10 months of full classroom type and practical training, and then they're still evaluated monthly. So it's a lot. Ongoing training, every deputy goes through in-service, 24 hours of in-service a year, and that's where we do our annual qualifications, our physical fitness tests, and then whatever mandatories there are. Like FDLE has mandatory classes like human diversity, discriminatory profiling, traffic stops. There's certain things that are mandatory that we have to do so many years, CPR. I say the two things that Sheriff Chronister has brought on board that we need to continue and build on is, first of all, de-escalation. So we've built that into pretty much all of our training now. So it's hard to say like exactly how much a deputy gets because we try to build it into everything. So de-escalation, what we're trying to teach the deputy is to create time and space. Try to understand from that person's perspective, what are they seeing? What are they going through? Why are they acting aggressively? There's a reason for it. Let's try to slow down, and create that time and space and see why they're acting that way. There's times when deputies have to use force. I mean, they still need to go home to their families and they need to be safe. They need to protect the public. But there are times where we can de-escalate, and that's what we put a major focus on. I think we need to keep building on that. And then the other thing, a lot of our issues revolve around mental health issues. So Sheriff Chronister has started a new unit that encompasses, every district has a deputy that focuses on mental health issues, homeless issues, and then we've hired 3 social workers that is in that unit, so they can go out and give more time, where a deputy may respond and deal with a mental health issue, but then this group can come back and give more time to it. I think that's important. Again, we want deputies to be able to recognize when somebody's in a mental health crisis. And they don't need to be put in the criminal justice system when they're going through. So if they can identify those identifiers when they're going through some sort of mental health crisis, then we can get the correct treatment for them.
I can say that the Sheriff's Office has been very proactive at swimming upstream and trying to curb things before they really blow out of control. You mentioned almost 10 months of training or 10 months of preparation. But what I haven't heard is is there any training on how to deal with people?
Relationship building,
but specifically cultural sensitivity, diversity training, bias, implicit bias.
Human diversity is mandatory. It's mandatory every year. So we do some sort of, to think of an example off the top, like we had the CARE group come in and talk about, these are some of the things if you're, dealing with a Muslim person that you may encounter, you may not understand. So yes, we do. That's mandatory every year. So during that in-service training, that's when we hit that stuff.
I asked that question because I think it's important for people to know that, look, this is something that's been taken seriously. And that brings me to Pastor Harris. So Pastor Harris, now you have somewhat of a unique perspective because you are a faith-based leader. you're a father, and you're an African American male. So you see things through multiple sets of eyes, right? But using all of that and now going back to being an anchor in the university area community as a faith-based leader, how well do you think the faith-based community has responded to the relationship issue or relationship concerns with law enforcement and community? And what do you think they haven't done?
Yeah, so I think that's a multi-layered question that's going to require a multi-level answer, and I'm going to try to give it as quickly as I can. I want to brag a little bit, first of all, and say very specifically our church, I think we've done an incredible job. I think we've leaned in on the tension. We haven't ran from it. I think we've answered the questions that are on people's minds. We've had the sheriff's office on a panel. We've had the state attorney on a panel. We've had representatives from the mayor's office. We've had representatives from city and county commission. We've had other influential leaders, state representatives, the whole 9 yards. So we've not run from the tension around law enforcement or community or justice or social impact or any of those things. So I would say that. But I think part of the reason why we've done that, which leads me to a broader conversation around the church, and I don't expect every church to immediately embrace this, but our church is intentionally multi-ethnic and diverse, right? Not every church in the city is that way. Right. And so that creates some challenges. And I think that what we have faced this year is really going to force all faith communities to evaluate, even if you're not diverse, how are you going to navigate these social justice issues? You can't be passive. I'm going to say something that many people may disagree with, but I'm here, right? So all of injustice and racism is rooted in bad theology. So if individuals can get their theology correct, then it becomes easier to navigate these issues, right? The reason why racism exists in America is because the church helped to found racism in America. And it was built off of bad interpretation of scripture, bad theology. And I don't want to give a whole history lesson there, but if all of that gets corrected, and so I believe therefore that the church in America, and more specifically in Tampa, has to be that solution. We can't just do what we do on the weekend or once a week and keep everything separated and compartmentalized. I believe the faith community has to get integrated into the community to be a part of the solution to help change some of the perspective. That being said, you asked, the last part of your question was, what is the church not doing yet? And I think more than anything, one of the things that pains me is that notwithstanding any other segment of our community, the church, the Big C church, is not unified. At some point, we have to major on the major, minor on the minors, focus on where we agree, the things that we don't agree on. If it doesn't totally change eternity, let's not focus on that right now.
Ross, I want to end this segment, this portion with you. This is all about relationships. You mentioned earlier, when you see something that's going on, you can pick up the phone, call the major, call whoever and say, hey, I need you to come over here. And then Pastor Harris said, but that's because Ross, Coach Ross, President Ross, just Ross, has been out there smoking his cigars for years, knows the people, knows the officers. But that's not Freddy, who just moves into the university area or has been in the university area but doesn't know the major. So what's the responsibility of the community to help build that bridge and relationship, if any?
The major was saying when he gave me a whole dialogue of 10 months, none of them relationship building. You feel me? I hear a lot of things that they could be trained to do, but yet who they really are. And if you find out who the individual in your community really is, then actuality, you don't have to ask. I hate to say it, back in Andy Dix, whatever his name, he used to say, he could walk around, everybody knew him in the house. I know who the major is. The reason why I know who the major is, because the major ride by, see me smoke a cigar, blow the horn at me constantly every day. You know what I mean?
But let me twist that around. So, because the major can do that, and because that's who he is, and most of the deputies that he works with, that's who they are. But the community, the residents, may not do that same thing. Do you feel they should?
No, because there's two different scenarios with that. Is that because not only because I want community change, the people in the community might don't want it, but then the major of them do. Sometimes you don't have to, the community has to come to you. You can actually go to them.
All right. Okay, thank you. So I want to do something a little different. I want to have some conversations, just you guys talking to one another. Major and pastor, the word relationship has come up a couple of times. Part of having a relationship is having a critical word, which is trust, right? And in the university, in every community right now, it seems, but specifically to the university area, there's a lack of trust between community residents as it relates to law enforcement. So really, let's just have a talk between you two. Why do you think that is? And what is the first step to not just fixing the broken trust, but keeping a good sense of trust, law enforcement and community?
Yeah, as succinctly as I can, and I don't mean to get too metaphorical here or too philosophical, but trust is not transactional, right? When law enforcement approaches community as a transaction, which in many cases they have to because that's how they're trained, real, true, authentic trust is not going to be established. Interaction will be established, but not true trust. Trust is established through empathy, through time, through investment, right? Without an agenda, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think one of the things that's got to happen is that we've got to shift the mindset. Secondly, I think we've got to acknowledge that some lack of trust is generational. Some of this is happened generationally, where you'll talk to a person who's 15, their dad, their granddad, their great-granddad never trusted law enforcement. Why was that, right? And so that has to be acknowledged, that has to be addressed. And then I think thirdly and finally, I think people have to be willing to ask the hard conversations and be willing to stay there long enough until they get the answers.
Yeah, I mean, trust, like he started, it has to be earned by building relationships and getting to know each other. And we can't do that unless we get out of our cars and interact with the community, have these community programs, and we get to know each other. Once I can understand your perspective, what you're dealing with or the community is dealing with, then it makes it easier for me to do my job. But in the same token, it's incumbent upon me to help you understand my perspective, why I do the things that I do, why law enforcement officers act the way that they act. And I think I'd have to earn it by proving to you that I'm here to put your best interests first. Regardless of what people think, we're not always here to arrest.
Did they train you to say that, Major? Repeat that again. Did they train? Did you hear what he just said?
So I will for Ross. We're here to put your best interests first. But that's how you earn trust. I mean, that's how, anybody know from leadership, you earn trust with your people by that, not showing them what you can do. And that's how we're going to get somewhere. We build that relationship and we're there for each other.
But I think he said something interesting. Yeah. He said, this is how I do my job. Right. If they only see it as a job, they being law enforcement, if they only see it as a job, it's going to remain a transaction. But if it becomes, this is my community, when you win, I win, it no longer becomes a transaction. Okay. That's got to change.
Got it. Ross, trust. Now I want you to put your coach hat on, right? So you deal with teens and young kids and young adults all day long. After the incident in Minneapolis happened, we had protests occur all throughout the nation, but we had some huge protests down here. And we had some property damage done. And some of that property damage was horrible, man. And it was...
Can I pause you for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Can we be clear to differentiate protesting and rioting?
And rioting. So let's thank you. So we had some rioting. We had some rioting to occur, and it damaged buildings and property. And some of this was done by some of our young people. What conversations have you had with the young people as to why or what's on their minds, and what advice do you give to the young people right now when it comes to dealing with law enforcement?
Two things, you know what I mean, and it's so, back to what Pastor was saying earlier, you know what I mean, it's so much of what they see now, to actually not just that incident itself. You have to go down quite a few incidents that we have been seeing for the last maybe 8-10 years of the same thing going on with the police or law enforcement shooting a black man. And then as a coach, it's very difficult for you to tell the kid, and I had this incident before, to tell the kid, okay, all law enforcement is not the same. As a coach, you have to actually be put into not only a father, not only as a leader, on both sides, because you're okay with the law enforcement and they do what they need to do, plus you understand the training that the kid sees every day. So as a coach, you have to separate yourself and your organization and your community from what the lawness and the riot does, because that's not who you are.
Pastor, I want you to weigh in, because you come here as an African American male father, and you've got experiences with your own children. Weigh in on that, the conversation to you.
There has to be wisdom from the adult's perspective. I've had to have some very real conversations with my sons, while also trying to protect their innocence and guard their heart. I have to cause them to be ambidextrous culturally. And part of what that means is be an authentic teenager, have fun, but also acknowledge that everybody may not see you as just a fun-loving 14, 15-year-old, and govern yourselves accordingly. So when you go into the store, son, take your hood off, right? Make sure that you're paying attention to what you touch, what you don't touch. If you feel like at any point something doesn't feel right, you call me, right? And it's, I'm gonna be honest, it's a hard conversation, man. These are hard conversations as a dad, and if I'm totally honest, there have been some times where I've got to hold my tears in to have a real conversation and then go cry later, because my sons are having questions in some ways that I don't have answers, so.
And I think we've got a long way until we see the need to have the talk goes away. But certainly Freddie, it starts with things like this.
But Freddie, but like he was saying earlier, as a father, you have to deliver that message. Okay, what about the 85% that does not have that father? And with the coach, and then you have to adjust to actually to understand, that the law enforcement is with us. Major is with us. We in the community have to work together. The relationship building that they do, the trust issue of knowing who they are. The police and the sheriff has to trust the youth to get to know the youth, so the youth get to know them, so that way we can have an understanding, so that situation will happen, because there's a training of the mind. Yeah. As a father, I'm a father too. I have to have that conversation with my youth. But as the 85% in the inner city communities where the fathers are not there, the coach has to have that conversation and actually have to be in the middle of both of the law enforcement and the kid that doesn't have the parent, because you're in a war zone now, because you're training, back to what my pastor was saying earlier about your spirit. The love of God has to come upon you to deal with the actual situation at hand in the community, such as, excuse me, they're always killing us anyway. I mean, I've heard that frequently, especially lately. You know what I mean? But understand this here. Don't, because what they do is that's not who you are.
So I think, to kind of sum it up then, we need to still talk to our youth. We still need to dive, do a deep dive, figure out what's on their minds, but then to everything that you guys have said, it all boils down to we've got to rebuild trust, and we've got to build upon relationships. So I think that sums it up, man. Thanks, fellas.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, if that session was intended to be thought-provoking and encourage much-needed dialogue on the racial injustice that exists in our country, I'd say it hit the mark. We encourage you to keep having these conversations. Keep speaking out on our broken social system and why greater degrees of systemic change are needed and are possible to achieve. We must use forums for open communication such as this to engage in progressive dialogue and, most importantly, truly listen to each other with the intent to understand, not to evaluate. It's easy to look at the world around us and see that inequity exists, that our social system is unjust, but do we live in silent disapproval, opposition to our values? Or do we act on our responsibility to combat injustice and oppression until there is truly equity and equality for all? The UACDC Partners Coalition believes the answer to the latter question is unequivocally yes. And we will continue having conversations like what you saw today, as well as advocate for systemic change. As a member of the Partners Coalition, if you have ideas or opportunities to incorporate into our efforts, we'd love to hear from you, as it will take all of us standing together as one to make the biggest impact. One way that we at UACDC are standing behind that commitment is by supporting local, minority-owned businesses right here in the Uptown University area. And the company we've chosen to highlight in our Small Biz Equals Big Impact segment is just that. I'd like to introduce you to 360 Cleaning Services. They are the essence of what this segment is about, and we're happy to show you why.
.360 Cleaning Services was started when I moved from the Bahamas to Tampa. In that time, there was a lot of construction going on, and I saw that there's a way to add value into the marketplace. And I got the opportunity to start my own business, work in city, county, state, and also federal levels. 360 Cleaning Services provides janitorial and light maintenance services. We service developers, real estate, offices. We started 3 years ago. We're still making an impact. We want to make an impact specifically to the community and helping individuals, families in whatever capacity. There's so many things that can be done to shape-shift the way that society is right now, and I think it's a perfect time actually where we're in to actually, uplift and help people. 360 Cleaning Services is just more than just a janitorial services company. We want to help make an impact, help people be friendly, open-minded to discussions, topics, not just business persona, but things that people can relate to. So 360 is very diverse, and that's what makes us stand out from a lot of different companies that just want to make revenue and don't really care about people.
Part of what makes the Partners Coalition work are the unique differences between us and the entrepreneurial spirit that so many of us have. We believe in 360 Cleaning Services and Descartes' vision for creating better opportunities for his family and his employees. And that's why we recently decided to contract them to provide their services at UACDC properties. Together, we can lift each other up and provide greater opportunities for all. No matter how small the effort may seem, collectively, it can have a much larger impact. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. It has been my pleasure to host this first ever virtual Partners Coalition gathering. Before we go, I'd like to quickly remind you of a few upcoming events offering from the UACDC and our partners. In lieu of time, I won't go into the specifics for each, but details for all these initiatives and more can be found on our website at uacdc.org. The next Be the Difference event, in partnership with Compassion Life Church, will take place on November 1st at Harvest Hope Park. They will once again give away 200 snack packs to area families, and registration is requested in advance. We also continue to offer free adult certification trainings through our Invoiced Work program. The next upcoming training is the Custodial Maintenance Certification and will take place on November 16th and 17th. Rebuilding Together Tampa Bay is currently vetting families for their Healthier Homes for Children program, in which families with at least one child age 0 to 14 may be eligible for free home repairs and trainings to help maintain a safer, healthier home. Net SVS and University Mall is currently recruiting area individuals for their 12-week paid pre-apprenticeship program that combines classroom and real-world projects to develop participants from novices to associate automation engineers. Our local Walgreens stores are looking to fill full and part-time roles, as well as temporary customer service associates to help bolster in-store staffing, some of which could lead to full-time job placement. Additionally, we want to share news from the Florida Housing Coalition regarding eviction and foreclosure protections for Florida residents. As the state's eviction and foreclosure moratorium expired, a CDC order issued in early September protects eligible tenants from eviction for non-payment of rent through the end of 2020. However, it is important to help spread the word that these protections are not automatic. Tenants must deliver a declaration to their landlord that meets CDC requirements. Again, this information and more can be found on the homepage of our website at uacdc.org. Lastly, I invite you to save the date of January 28th for our first Partners Coalition gathering of 2021. 2021, can you believe that? At this point, we're unable to determine if a gathering will be able to be in person or virtual, but know that we are committed to keeping this group moving forward, and we will adapt to the situation we're presented with, however it may look. Until then, we hope the remainder of 2020 is impactful for you, and we look forward to great partnership opportunities in the new year. Be well and take good care of each other.